Hello, my name is Sean Rhodes, and I want to welcome you to this next episode of Awaken, the Inner Warrior. Today I have a special treat for you. We're going to be moving a little bit west of the martial traditions that we've been covering in Japan and China. We're going to be going outside of that and moving into India today because I came across something that I had to share with you. In Hindu culture, which stretches back 4,000 years in their written record, through these books called the Vedas, they have this warrior culture that they've been honoring for that long, for 4,000 years. And that's a lot longer than the written records of China or Japan go back to one of the earliest written languages, Sanskrit. That's what the Vedas are written in. And in their warrior culture, they've developed ways to have warriors get their internal selves on track. So the things that we cover in Awaken the Inner Warrior all have to do with applying these warrior principles to our daily lives in a modern time. And so for ancient warriors in India, they use this thing called the Neomas, which is one of the 8 limbs of yoga, to process their decisions. So the limbs of yoga, 8 of them, right? One of them is the type of yoga that you've probably seen people do where they stretch and they get on all those crazy positions, very flexible folks, and that's great. I love that type of yoga. But the other limb of yoga that I really enjoy practicing and studying are the niyamas. Now the niyamas are 5 steps that warriors put their decisions through in ancient Hindu culture and tradition. Through the Vedas you can track it, and these niyamas are ways of making sure that you are coming from a place of purity, so that your decisions are coming from this place of gratitude and of connection to this greater power, instead of lack and of fear and of doubt, which is where so many of the decisions we make in our lives come from. So this process you can use in your daily life to make sure that as a warrior you're showing up from a place of purity, from a place of strength, from a place of honor and virtue and dedication. And that's why I'm very excited to be able to share these with you today, so that you can immediately begin putting them into practice in your life. So let's go over the niyamas. Now, the 5 niyamas each have a different place in the decision-making process. Okay, and this is whether you're deciding whether to take a new job, whether to make a decision at work, whether to enter or get out of a relationship. You can use the niyamas as a process, as a program to put yourself through, so that you can make sure your decisions are coming from the right place. Now, when warriors in ancient Hindu culture were able to utilize the niyamas, they were said to be coming from a place of pure body, mind, and spirit, and heart. Right, that sounds a lot like the Eastern cultures of China and Japan when they're talking about putting their practices into application in their daily life. So the Hindu tradition was, a lot of people say, the root of the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Korean martial traditions as well. So let's go over the niyamas, 5 of them. The first one is the niyamas that says you need to be in a place of purity, both internally and externally, before you make a decision. This internal place of purity means that you're not inebriated. It means that you're not under the influence of some chemical. And I know that a lot of us have made decisions in our lives, myself included, under the influence of something that you really regretted later on. So if you can have the mindfulness to practice niyamas in any place in your life, if you have tied on a few and you're thinking of making a major life decision, you can put it through this first niyama and say, am I pure internally? And you can immediately know that's a yes or no answer. That's very black and white. Do I feel pure internally? The second part of this first niyama of purity is being in a pure external environment, to make sure that your space externally is not cluttered. Now, if you're working in an office and you have stacks of papers and forms and stuff that you have to get to, and it's like towers above your head, you cannot be expected to make intelligent, rational, focused decisions. So a lot of what we do at Awaken the Inner Warrior ties in the importance of having a clean external environment so that you can be focused internally. So this first niyama of purity says that your external and internal environments have to be aligned. They have to be pure, they have to be clean before you can really focus yourself and put yourself forward in the best way in this world. The second niyama is one of gratitude. Now this one says that you're coming from a place of gratefulness before you make a decision. So a lot of us, when we make our decisions, we're thinking, if I make this decision, it could mean that, I won't have to be afraid anymore, or I'll prove myself to the world. I won't have to doubt myself internally. Now the second niyama says, get yourself right internally. Get yourself right in a place of gratefulness before you make those decisions. So that when you make those decisions, you have all of this stuff behind you that says, I'm already grateful for what I have. When I'm moving forward, it's coming from that place of gratefulness, of thankfulness, of connection. And when you can do that, you will be surprised at how quickly your decisions change for the better, and how your life, more grateful things come into it for you to be grateful for. The basic law of attraction stuff, but the Vedic tradition was tapping into it 4,000 years before Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich. And he probably based a lot of what he did on these traditions, just like the niyamas. So let's go over the niyamas quickly, the ones we've covered. I want to make sure that you get them. If you're writing them down, great. If you're thinking about them in your head, great. Whatever your method of taking them in is, do that. So the first one, the first niyama is being pure of body and of environment. The second one is of gratitude, being grateful for what you already have before you go into that next decision, that next process, or next stage of your life. The third niyama is being in touch with your shadow side, knowing who you are not. A lot of what we focus on here at Awaken the Inner Warrior is being very clear on who we are, being very clear on the spirit and the power that we carry into our daily lives as warriors, as modern warriors, as martial artists, as business people, as family people, being very aware of the truth of who we are and the accomplishments that we've had in our life. This third niyama takes a different look at that, and it says, make sure you're aware of your shadow side. Make sure that you are aware of the things inside you that show up, the fear, the doubt, the lack, the sadness, the anger. And these things are essential for you to exist as a human. They're not bad things at all, but it's important that you're aware when you're making decisions that the sadness is showing up, that the fear is showing up, that the doubt is showing up. And when it does, knowing that you need to take a step back and go back through the niyamas to make sure you're coming from that place of purity, to make sure you're grateful, and to again make sure that the shadow side is not making the decision for you. Because if you're getting into a relationship just because you're afraid of being alone, and a lot of us do that throughout our lives, then you have experience to know that usually doesn't turn out well. If you're afraid of being alone, not a good reason to get into a relationship. Getting into something new like that in your life should come from a place of gratefulness. It's saying, my life is so beautiful the way it is now, I have to share it with people. That's the reason to get into a relationship. And that's putting that thought process through the niyamas. You see what I did? So the third niyama is one of knowing who your shadow side is, knowing that it's not doubt, fear, lack, or worry. Now let's go through the niyamas again to make sure that you've got the first three. The first one, purity, making sure you're pure of internal and external environment. The second one, gratitude, making sure you're already grateful for what you have and who you are, what you've accomplished, the great things that your life has already shown you, and being sure that your decisions are coming from that place instead of one of lack and fear. Now the third niyama is knowing that shadow side, recognizing the lack, the fear, the doubt, the worry that show up. The fourth niyama, the niyama we're going to go over next, is one of trusting. It's one that allows you to plug into that universal intelligence. It's like taking that Ethernet cable for your internet connection and cranking it right into God's internet jack, right? So it's saying, I trust myself because I'm tapped in to the experiences that I've had and to that divine higher power. Now, if you're not a spiritual person, if you don't believe in that divine or higher power, look at this as a way of trusting your past experience in life. It's saying that you've done the practice. If you're a warrior about to step onto the battlefield, you've spent those decades training in the martial systems of your practice to know that you can trust yourself to react rightly and unconsciously and just as a natural flow when you're interacting with your opponent. If you do believe in that higher power, that consciousness, that divine intelligence, whatever you want to call it, then think of it as tapping into that source and saying that it's been guiding me my whole life to the place where I am now. I trust it to bring me the decisions, the subconscious, emotions that I need to manifest in order to find the right choice for myself in this next process, this next stage of my life. So that's the fourth niyama. Let's go over them all again to make sure you got them. The first one is purity, pure body, pure environment. The second one, gratitude, being grateful for what you already have in your life. The third one, being in touch with that shadow side, knowing the fear, the doubt, the anger, the lack when they show up in your life, being able to recognize it. And a meditation practice really helps out with that. So if you're not practicing already, I recommend that you look into meditation for yourself, because you can immediately see when that doubt, that fear, that worry, that anger, the feelings of lack, when they show up. And you don't have to attach to them. You don't have to grab onto them and follow them down the rabbit hole. You can say, that's great, I know you're there, letting it go. All right? And the fourth niyama is that one of trust, of hooking into divine intelligence. When you can use that fourth niyama, you can tap into higher power, and you can, like, God has a Facebook page, let's say. I know it's a weird thought, but let's say God has a Facebook page, and you're friends with him, as you should be. You and God, you're tight. You post a decision on the God's Facebook page. You say, God, I'm thinking of doing this next in my life. Using that fourth niyama is allowing God to be able to hit the like button on that decision. All right? So that's that process in modern times for you. Now, the fifth and final niyama is the most important one, and that is letting go and letting God. All right? Now, this fifth niyama is something that warriors practice all over the world. Athletes practice this all over the world. How they do it is before they go into a big game or a battle, they all get together and they pray. And they say, God, we've done everything we can to practice, to prepare, and now we're turning this decision over to you, because we know that a victory without that feeling of gratefulness and that feeling of connection with ourselves, our teammates, our comrades, and you is going to be meaningless. Now, if business people put this niyama into practice, they would not end up having midlife crisis. They would not work for 30 or 40 years building this empire of success only to realize that they've alienated their children, they don't have a relationship anymore, that they don't have a spouse, a partner anymore, because they've spent so much time in the business that their relationship with their partner has fallen off. All right, this is the niyama that says a victory without that gratitude, without that connection to the things that are really important in my life, that victory is meaningless. Now, when I was a war correspondent in Iraq on the battlefield, before every patrol, the Marines would get together, they'd huddle up, and they'd pray. If there was a chaplain present, then that chaplain would lead the prayer, and they'd say, God, we've trained, we've practiced, we've done everything we know how to do. We put the outcome of this next patrol, this next firefight, this next situation into your hands, so that no matter what happens, it'll be your divine will. Now, that's a very spiritual or religious way to look at it. If you're not spiritual or religious, don't worry about it. You can think of it as tapping into the inner knowing that you have, saying, I've done everything I can. I've put the decision or the next thing I'm about to do in my life through the four niyamas, through the purity, through the gratitude, through the making sure I'm not coming from my shadow self, and through the practice, through the trusting that I've done everything I can. I've done all four of those things. All I can do now is take action. All I can do now is put that forward in my life. Make sure that I'm moving into the next decision, that I'm not, facing paralysis by analysis, as so many of us do in our lives. So those are the five niyamas: the purity, the gratitude, the being in touch with the shadow self and knowing you're not operating from that, trusting the practice and the mindfulness and the hours that you've put into mastering this next decision, that you've done the research to make sure you're making the right decision, and finally turning it over to whatever higher power you believe in, or turning it over to action, so that you do not face that slow death that comes from knowing you have the knowledge to make it happen, but not actually going through and performing the action that brings it into fruition in your life. So these five niyamas are part of the Vedic tradition that Hindu warriors have used for thousands of years to put their decisions through before they stepped onto the battlefield, before they made major life decisions. These are the things they did in order to be fully present as warriors, to be pure of body, mind, heart, and spirit in their tradition. And so when I heard about this, I had to think to myself, man, that's great that they did that, but I'm interested in taking the yoga practices, the yamas, one of the 8 limbs of yoga, off of the mat and into my daily life. And that's how I started getting into the niyamas, to this yogic tradition. And that's something that I do through these Awaken the Inner Warrior episodes, podcasts, and blogs. I take these warrior practices off of the battlefield, off of the dojo training floor, and into people's lives, into my life and into yours. I love sharing it with you. That's how I can be passionate in my life through my pure body, mind, and heart practice to bring these warrior traditions to you. So if you haven't already, I really recommend you go to awakentheinnerwarrior.com. Check it out. Sign up for these new video episodes, new blogs, new podcasts, so that if you are trying to awaken the warrior within yourself, that you have fresh content to apply to your life every single week. Free content, me passing on what I've learned through 2 decades of practice, traveling the world with warrior tribes, through what I've learned so that I can help you, so that I can create a world of limitless people. That's my mission in life, to help you, to help others awaken the warrior within themselves. So I hope you've enjoyed this video episode, the 5 Neomas. I hope you can put them into practice in your life. Go to awakentheinnerwarrior.com, sign up for future updates. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, sharing the Neomas with you, and I hope to see you soon.